ए वेरी गुड डे टू ऑल। आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे एंड्रू मार्वेल की एक बहुत ही शानदार पोएम टू हिज कॉय मिस्ट्रेस। एंड दिस पोएम इज published in 1681 and it falls under the category of metaphysical poetry. So we'll get to know about each terms slowly and steadily. So let's first look at the introduction of the poem. And before starting the poem, I would like to tell you that this is complete video. You don't need to go anywhere because I will give you the full explanation of everything in this complete video, and by end of the video you will have the proper knowledge about the forms of the metaphysical poetry and what the poem is trying to say. So let's go through the introduction of the poem. So I will be using bilingual language so that I can convey my words and everybody can get the core of the lecture at its very best. So, introduction. So, to his Coe Mistress is one of the finest example of metaphysical poetry in English literature, and it is written by Andrew Marvell and published posthumously in 1681. It imitates earlier love poems such as The Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe. So, it's a form of metaphysical poetry, and metaphysical poetry is all about conceits, and two contrasting images are compared, and somewhat two different type of images that you won't imagine that these images are compared to form a kind of connection. सो दो भिन्न तरीके की इमेजेस जो आप सोच भी नहीं सकते उनको कंपेयर करके एक 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 पोएटिक इमेज बनाने की कोशिश की जाती है मेटाफिजिकल पोएट्री में। और ये जो पोएम है ये 1681 में पब्लिश हुई थी, और ये आयम्बिक टेट्रामीटर राइमिंग कपलेट्स होते हैं, आयम्बिक टेट्रामीटर। तो चार के ये बनेंगे, मतलब दो स्ट्रेस दो अनस्ट्रेस्ड, ये फॉलो होगा। ठीक, स्ट्रक्चर क्या है, तीन स्टेंजा है। एक स्टेंजा की लाइन 20 है, एक स्टेंजा की लाइन 12 है, एक स्टेंजा की लाइन 14 है। आगे बढ़ते हैं। व्हाट इज मेटाफिजिकल पोएट्री, तो पढ़ देता हूँ मैं। द मेटाफिजिकल पोएट्री वॉज क्वाइंड बाय सैमुअल जॉनसन टू डिस्क्राइब ए ग्रुप ऑफ 17th सेंचुरी, ये फेमस एसेस थे, 17th century English poet whose work combined emotion with reasoning, explored the theme of love, time, death, and religion and existence. So, combined emotion, and that too with reasoning. Combined emotion with reasoning. So, विट होता था, इंटेलेक्चुअल आर्गुमेंट्स होता था पोएम में। एंड इन पे आरोप भी लगता था कि कभी कभी इतना विटी और अपने आप को इतना इंटेलेक्चुअल दिखाने की कोशिश करते थे कि इनकी पोएट्री कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो जाती थी। इमोशंस को रीजंस के साथ जोड़ते थे, लव को एक्सप्लोर करते थे, टाइम, डेथ, रिलीजन एंड एग्जिस्टेंस को देख करते थे। यूज ऑफ कॉन्सेप्ट जो मैंने बोला, अनयूजुअल एक्सटेंडेड कंपैरिजन, किसी से जोड़ दिया। यहाँ पे द फ्ली नाम की पोएम है जॉन डन द्वारा। वो क्या करते हैं, वो क्या कहते हैं कि उनको उनकी एक, मतलब एक लवर, ठीक, और एक फीमेल दोनों सोते हैं। तो ये जो लवर कहता है कि ये जो फ्ली या ने तुमको काटा है, और ये फ्ली ने मुझे को काटा है, तो दोनों का खून उस फ्ली के बॉडी में मिंगल हो रहा है। तो इस some kind of sexual arousal. So you can see how the different images, grotesque images, the images you can't imagine, is being compared. Combination of emotion and logic is there, philosophical and reflective themes is there, and conversation yet persuasive language is used in the poem, striking and sometimes shocking imaginary, जो यहाँ पे मैंने बात की। philosophical, a certain sense of philosophical is there. So जो मेजर मेटाफिजिकल पोएट्स हैं वो क्या हैं, जॉन डन है द फॉरमोस्ट मेटाफिजिकल पोएट्स, एंड्रू मार्वेल जिनकी कविता हम पढ़ रहे हैं, टू हिज क्वाय मिस्ट्रेस, एंड जॉर्ज हॉरवर्ड, ही रोट रिलीजियस poetries, devotional poetries. So, and spiritual conceits used. Henry Wagon, mystic verses with natural imaginary and religious reflections. Richard Crashaw, Bork, religious poetry with intense emotional imaginary. Abraham Cowley, versatile poet who blended classic learning with metaphysical wit. So these are some important metaphysical poets that you should remember that they wrote the same kind of poetry. What kind of poetry? Just we listened that combined emotion with reasoning and explored the themes of love, time, death, and what are the characteristics of this poetry that is mentioned there. So T.S. Eliot. Now let's talk about the T.S. Eliot. And T.S. Eliot is so like Samuel. See, Samuel Johnson has somewhat negative images of them. So he believed that this poem unnecessarily complicated the form of the poetry. Poetry should be simple. You shouldn't be sounding so much intellectual in the poetry, so it somehow gets delineated from the common masses. But on the other hand, T.S. Eliot was so much praises of this poet that he praised them. The modern poet and the critic T.S. Eliot admired the metaphysical poet. He argued that the greatness in their ability to fuse analytical thought with emotional intensity. He realized that earlier, either there was like either there was what we can say here. I will use this term. Either there was reasoning or there was emotion. Hmm. So he is telling that earlier there was only emotion, and then this poetry came that mixed reason with the emotion, and then after that there was only emotion. So these were some unique kind of poems who mixed emotions with reasons, and there is their ability, their greatness lies in mixing these two type of things in their poetry. So metaphysical poetry possessed a unified sensibility. What I am telling, thought and feeling were closely connected. In later Western literature, the balance was lost, leading to a separation of intellect and emotion. The same thing I was telling to you, that in the Western literature, the balance was lost. Eliot considered them superior because they could think and feel simultaneously with the poetry. And the main aim of the poetry is that it should be rational yet emotional. It should elevate you yet motivate you. So what is carpe diem? Carpe diem basically sees the day. मैं बोलूंगा यार, आज का दिन है, जी ले भाई, जीने के है 4 दिन, बाकी सब बेकार दिन. सब बॉलीवुड में भी है भाई, कार्pe diem. Everybody want to seize the day, and it was in Horace Odes 23 to 13 BC. This thing came. Carpe diem urges people to enjoy the present moment because life is short and uncertain. It directly challenges the tradition of the Christian doctrine that earthly pleasures should be sacrificed in the favor of eternal happiness in the afterlife. So there is no afterlife. All these mummies lying waiting for their afterlife, all this sect talking about the afterlife. This poetry rejects that afterlife. That what, the Charvaks in the Indian philosophy, they never talked about Atma. They talked about the presence of things. What we see, what we see is what is there. We have not seen future, we have not seen past, but we see the present. So enjoy the present, what you perceive. So these doctrines are already, like, there is a certain sect of societies and religions and culture that talk about the afterlife. So these poetries reject that afterlife. Carpe diem, Marvel uses the certainty of death as a logical argument for love. Now the speaker reminds the mistress that the youth and the beauty will not last forever. He never mentions marriage, raising questions of morality and agency. So Robert Herrick's poem is two virgins to make much of the time, gather a rust bound while you may be. So this is also the like what is carpe diem poetry. So here Robert Herrick is talking about all the virgins to make much of the time, because you never know when this life fuses away. So this kind of poetry where we talk about the present moment to seize the day. And historical and social background, I can talk about the early modern England. I will read it out and I will explain when it becomes necessary. So, reason of Queen Elizabeth was there. Major political and cultural changes were happening. Glorious revolution took place. Mary II accepted the constitutional monarchy. Like here drama was flourishing. Mm, Art was flourishing, and here also art was flourishing. So rise of Protestant in England breaks from the Catholic Church. So Protestantism brought some kind of on orthodoxy in the church, and now everything was questioned. Like marriage was now was a social and familial arrangement. Yeah, marriage was always a social and familial arrangement and requires parental consent, and age was also raised from um, 12 to 14 for boys and for girls, and I think 16 for boys. 16 for boys, this was also there. Female chastity was strictly policed, a clear double standard existing between man and woman, while a man was considered unholy, unhealthy if he hadn't have sex, while woman was mm, not that chastised if she has already had something sexual experiences. And medical theory suggested that abstinence could harm male body, like, and conduct manual mm, instructed men on ideal wives. Okay, so this was one book, one manual, like discourse on marriage and writing, that instructed men on ideal wives. So these are the things that are taking place now. Let's move to the gender agency and the silent mistress. The woman is identified as virgin, and her chastity is the central subject of the speaker's argument. Like, I will tell you the history of the mistress. Now, if I use mistress, you can say the mistress, sees my wife. Basically, today I can say that she is my wife if I someone calls mistress. But earlier, the mistress was someone, the lady, earlier. Let me change the color of the pen. Earlier, the lady who is unmarried, unmarried, is called mistress. So here the thing, you now remember the whole historical context. Like unmarried sexual coitus is against the church, against the Protestant belief. So now he's going against the l- laws of the church. And mistress is unmarried is implied here. The woman is identifies as virgin. Her chastity is the central subject of the speaker's argument. The speaker never mentions marriage, creating a moral ambiguity. If she becomes pregnant, he breaks no obligation. So this reflects the unequal gender expectations of early modern England. And the little coy means shy, she is shy, reluctant, or modest, but also suggests a playful flirtation. The mistress never speaks in the poem. Like, it's a dramatic monologue too. It's an earlier form of dramatic monologue. What happens in that dramatic monologue? A speaker will speak to unnamed speaker. Here, the speaker of the poem is speaking to unnamed speaker, and here unnamed speaker is intended that she is the mistress. So that the reader hears only the speaker versions of her feeling, and you, when dramatic monologue, there is one speaker and his views, so it becomes somewhat biased. Also, we see that it becomes biased, like so, her silence raises fundamental question about the female agency and whose desire the poem truly represent. Is it representing the male desire or the female desire? Desire, that's the true game of the poem. So, structure of the poem. Let's see. 20 line is there in the first stanza, 12 line is there in 12 lines are there in the second stanza, and 14 lines are there in the third stanza. The first stanza creates the hypothetical base, like, if we have unlimited time and space, I would patiently admire your beauty forever. So it's kind of creating a base, but it's not so. The reality is that in the second stanza, but time flies, death is inevitable, your youth is brief, and grave awaits us both. So, we are creating a hypothetical situation, but reality is different. So, what is the conclusion? Let's have the union. Therefore, seize the moment. Let us love passionately before the time destroy us. Okay. So logical argument structure. Each stanza is one stage of a logical syllogism. Stanza one premise, stanza is to counter premise and conclusion. Basically, it's a stage like that. Iambic tetrameter, like four iambic feet per line. Soft stresses into four. Soft stresses into four. I will say you, for example, had we but world enough and time. So see, one stressed followed by stressed. Now read the line. Soft stressed. So how we can read it? Had we but world enough and time. Rhyming scheme of the poem, one should remember A, B, B, C, C. So this is the rhyming scheme. There are the rhyming couplets. Rhyming couplets. So rhyming couplets, like couplet is two. So two A, and then one other couplet is B B, and then another couplet is C C. So let's move. Now let's drill deep, full to the poem. So पढ़ते हैं poem को चलिए. Had be but the world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. So the speaker, I will explain two lines. The speaker is telling that, my dear lady, if we have enough time, then this modesty, this shyness is of no crime. But the fact is that we don't have that enough, that we don't have that time. But see, but that idea will not reflect it, but he will create a hypothetical base or something like that, so that he respond to the reality. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love stay. So we will sit down and we'll have enough time to ponder about, and we'll walk and pass and talk about our love stay. You by the Indian Ganges side, should rubies find, I by tide of Humber would complain. So yes, there are two rivers mentioned here. Here's Ganges and here is Humber. So one is in India and another is in England. So, and it talks about the colonization, the post-colonial colonization of England too. How England is extending its territory, the empire where sun never sets. So he's taking that, if we had that much time, then see the separation of the geographical separation of both the lover and the mistress. So one, she is by the Ganges side, and she will able to find rubies. Rubies is red gemstone. So she would be able to find rubies, and on the Humber river, this the lover would also be there. So and and then he's moving. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. So the thing is here that he is telling that this, in the book of Genesis, there Noah talks about the flood where everything destroys. So he says that I would love you 10 years before the flood. That much time. That flood, the flood is not happening anytime soon, and I will love you till 10 years before the flood. And here it is supposed that the Jews would convert to Christianity, and that would be doomsday. So here he talks about the collapsing of the world order, collapsing of the earth. So that much time you have, and and that much time you have, and you take your time, you be with me, and you refuse only when the Jews is starting to get converted into the Christianity. So that much time he have. He talks about the slowness of the time, and that image is reflected again in the poem. My vegetable love should grow faster than empire and more slow. So the vegetable love, the plant seedlings grow very slowly, and that seedling should grow faster than any kind of empire that this earth has seen. So, more slow. And 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze. So, he will take 100 years to praise her eyes, and and he will gaze at her forehead. He will take 100 years. Hyperbola. He will take that much year. 200 years, and he will take 200 years to adore her breast. So each breast he will adore 200 years, but 30,000 to the rest, and like 30,000 years to the rest of the body. So that much time he have, and age at least to every part, and age at least to every part, and age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart. And you, my mistress, he talks about to the mistress. He talks to the mistress, and you, my mistress, at the very end when this world is nearing, you then respond to me that you accept my love or not. For lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. And all kind of things that he talked about, all kind of images, all kind of hyperbole, all kind of this hypothetical base he has created in respect to the time. He says that you, my lady, you deserve all this, and you deserve nothing less than that. Let's see. Open with the conditional clause. Had we but world enough and time, the entire stranger exists in an imaginary world. So he has created an imaginary world, like 30,000 for the rest of the body, 100 years for the forehead and eyes, and two, 200 years for each breast. These are all imaginary stuffs. Exotic imaginaries, the Ganga and the Humber contrast distance romance and local reality. Hyperbolic time scale 100 years to praise her eyes, 13,000 for the rest. So, my vegetable love should grow faster than the empire, the conceit of slow growing organic love spanning geological time. So, all kind of flattery is using, flattering using for a lady to accept his invitation, to so that the lady can be with him, sleep with him. Establishes the poem's logical premise: if it were infinite, coyness would be no crime. So if time is not bound, then this sinus is of no crime. Let's move to the second stanza. But at my back I always hear Time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie desert and vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my cooing song. Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust, that the graves find and private place, but none I think do their embrace. So this is the reality. Now I talk about line by line. But at my back, I always hear. But at my back, I always have in my mind. I always have the images in my mind. The time's winged chariot. That time chariot, रथ जो समय का रथ है, वो तेजी से नजदीक आता जा रहा है. And yonder all before us lie desert of vast eternity. And before us there lies a desert of vast eternity, a desert that is never ending desert. एक मरुस्थल है जो कभी खत्म नहीं होगा. And in that Your beauty shall no more be found, and your beauty has gone away, because the time is so much small that your beauty will perish. Nor in thy marble ball shall sound my echoing song, and when you will be there in your grave, you will not listen to my song, you will not listen to my humping sweet song that I sing for you, my lady. And the worms shall try that long preserved, and the virginity that you have saved till now will be eaten by worms. They will engulf your virginity, and your honor will be just will be mixed in soil, and that will turn to dust, and in the ashes all my lust, and all the lust that I preserve for you with emotions, all that will also turn into the lashes. He talks about his own fate also. The grave is a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Even though the grave is a very fine and private place, but there is no embrace, my lady, because when we die, we don't have any sensibility of action. So, but a single pivot word that reversed the imaginary of the world of stanza 1. So stanza 1 is talking about the imaginary situation, but then speaker pulls us back to the reality. But there is a certain condition that but time is a wind chariot hurrying near. Time is personified and as an unstoppable rushing force chasing the lovers. Desert of vast eternity, stark images of emptiness after death. Eternity is not heaven, but a lifeless void. So, eternity is not a heaven, it is a desert, it is a lifeless void. Shocking imaginary is used. Worm will violate the mistress' long preserved virginity, her chastity grotesquely mocked by death. So grotesque images is producing that yes, your virginity will be eaten by worm. Your chastity is of no more. And this desert of vast eternity is not an heaven, it's a hell. Your quaint honor turned to dust. Irony is there. The honor that you are guarding now is so careful is meaningless. Within no time it will be in grave. The grave is a fine and private place, but none, I think, do dare embrace. Darkly witty understatement that poem's most famous couplet, that grave, even though is a private space, but nobody is going to love there, nobody is going to perform the sensual act of love there, nobody is going to kiss someone there, nobody is going to do anything there. There is no feeling there, the only skeleton, and the girl, this worms are eating us. So my lady, please, please listen to me. The stanza third is there. Now therefore, while the youthful hue sits on the skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires, and at every pore with the instant fires, now let us sport us while we may, and now like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than languish in his low chapped power. Let us roll our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasure with rough strife, though the iron gate of life. Thus, though we cannot make our son stand still, yet we will make him run. So this is the last stanza of the poem. So now therefore, and is the logical conclusion of the poem. And stanza 3 is going to answer with syllogism built on stanza 1 and stanza 2. Youthful hue sits on the skin like morning dew. So he is telling that now, therefore, with the youthful hue, that we are now young, and our youthful hue is compared to the morning dew. So morning dew is something like fresh dew, and as the days passes, night may be the oldness of the day. So he might be comparing the morning dew with the youthful hue. So we are youth as useful as morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpire, and while you have some energies left with your soul, and mm, mm, like you have something in your soul at every pore with instant fires, and you feel the same passion of love in you. Now let us sport us while we may. Now with all the passion that every pores of your skin with fires with the passion of love, while your soul transpires for love. Now let us meet while we may. And now, like amorous birds of prey, like they eat the flesh. So he's talking about the rugged romance, mm, like birds of prey. Let's chew each other. Let's devour each other. Rather at once time devour, then languish in slow chapped power. Like he's talking about like instead of chunks. Like let's devour, let's engulf, let's lost in love, slow chapped power. So devour, tear our pleasures with rough strife. He is talking about the violent predatory conceit. Passion is so intense it resembles a beast of prey hunting. So rather at once our time devour, then languish in slow chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball. Let us roll with all our strength. Let us love with all our strength and our sweetness up into one ball. So, and tear our pleasure with rough strife. Tear our pleasure with rough strife. So, through the iron gates of life. Through the iron gates of life. So, basically, here, sexual imagery is that iron gates of life is like vagina. So, author is talking, and vagina like a mistress sees virgin, and let's talk frankly, as the poem implied, hymen is not broken yet. So, with the strife, with the pleasure strife, with the breaking of the iron gates, the poet talks about that he wants to break the gate open. He wants to open the gate. Through those, we cannot make our son because we don't have time. Some here is time, it is used as a time. So we cannot make our time. So before the time runs away, let's run with the time. Stand still, yet we'll make him run. So before the time runs away, let's run with the time. He's talking about. The whole idea is that here he wants sexual unison. Let's see. Devour, roll all our strength into one ball, energetic physical image of unified concentrated force, into one concentrated force. Though we cannot make our son stand still, yet we'll make him run. We cannot stop time, but we can race it. We can run with it. The poem ends with defiance that lover assert agency over the morality through passionate living. So, to his koi mystery is a prime example of metaphysical poetry, and it is structured in the these all things you can click and screenshot. And thank you once again for being with me here and listening to my lecture, and I hope it helps you in your examination. All the best. God bless you.